Hello and welcome. Today we're talking about how to build a property portfolio fast using the BRRR strategy, the buy, refurbish, rent, refinance strategy. Now make sure you watch this video all the way to the very end, because not only am I going to share how to undergo this strategy, we're going to go through an example together, and also I'm going to give you some really good killer tips on how you can scale your property portfolio using the BRRR strategy. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Marco. I'm a portfolio landlord, property investor, developer, and mentor. And I'm very passionate about helping people and companies invest in property. But today we're talking about buy, refurbish, rent, and refinance, and how to use this strategy to scale a property portfolio fast. Now, first of all, let's define what BRRR is. So it stands for buy, refurbish, rent, refinance. And some people also add another R on the end, which is for repeat. So very briefly, let's go through it. So buy is when we're buying a property, very obvious. Refurbish is where we're adding value to the property via refurbishment, via renovation. We're spending money on the property to lift the value. Rent, again, is quite simple. It's where we're renting it out to a tenant. And the refinance, the most important part of the strategy, is where we're refinancing at the new higher valuation after the refurbishment had added that value. And we're pulling out some of that cash, if not all, and then we've got that cash to repeat and go into the very next deal. So that's what BRRR is. That's what buy, refurbish, rent, refinance is. Now, before I talk about how to actually go about doing this and how to do this to scale a property portfolio and build a property portfolio in the shortest time frame as possible, I just want to stress the idea and the concept why investors undergo the BRRR strategy when it comes to scaling a property portfolio in a timely manner. And it's all to do with the refinance side, as I've already alluded to, because if you can refinance a property and pull out the cash you've invested in that property, or the majority of the cash you've invested in that property, well, all of a sudden you can go again because you've got cash in your bank to buy the very next investment. And all you simply have to do is repeat the process. Find another property, buy it at a good price point, add value via refurbishment and renovation, and then once the property is then valued at the new higher value, you can pull that cash out again. So onto the main part of the video, how do we actually do this? How do we undertake the BRRR strategy to scale a property portfolio fast? Well, before we even talk about the first B, which is buy, we need to just backtrack very slightly. What is your deal flow like? Deal flow is the amount of deals you come across in terms of to purchase a property. Now, for those of you new to property, will have quite poor deal flow. Of course, you haven't been in the industry, you haven't been building those relationships and connections. It's to be expected. But for those with some property experience, maybe you've actually got a good amount of deal flow, and maybe it's rekindling relationships with agents that you purchased from in the past. Now, I'm going to give you 3 ways on how you can improve your deal flow before we come on to the buying part of the BRRR strategy. Number 1 is by taking this into your very own hands, and by not relying on agents, not relying on Rightmove and Zoopla, and actually sending letters directly to vendors and directly to people and landlords that own properties. So you can quite simply identify properties that you're looking to purchase, and if the person who owns that property lives at the address, well, of course you've got the address. You can send them a letter, something on the lines of, dear so-and-so, I'm looking to buy property in the area. If you're considering selling, please contact me on X. It can be as basic and as simple as that. Now, if it's a property that's tenanted, all you have to do is go to the land registry, pay £3, and you'll be able to find the address of the landlord and the person that owns that property, so you can send the letter directly to them and not the tenant. Number 2 is actually to build better relationships with agents. And I stress on, and I always talk about this in my previous videos, it's so obvious, it's so simple, but it actually works. The better your relationship with an agent, the more discount you can command, because they know, they like, they trust you, they've done business with you, and they're more willing to encourage the vendor and the seller who they represent to take your lower offer because you're known to them and you have a high probability of completing. Whereas someone else, maybe their offer is slightly higher than yours, but they're not known to that agent. Now, the third way to increase your deal flow is to sign up to our weekly property investing newsletter. The newsletter is completely free, and also it's the place where I release these property opportunities first. So everyone who's signed up to the email list will get these opportunities coming to them before anyone else. So you've got exclusive content and a great reason to sign up. Head to my website. You can go to ms7.uk/email to sign up, or a link is in the description. So there are 3 ways on how you can increase your deal flow. And let's come on to the buy side of the BRRR. Now, buying, in my opinion anyway, and if you take anything away from this video, probably it's going to be this tip that I'm about to give right now. Buying is the most important thing in property investing. Not selling, but buying. Because if you can buy buy at the right price and a price that suits you, everything else is so much easier. Refinancing is easier, selling the property is easier, everything else is so easy, because if you bought at the right price, you've got a large margin of safety, so if things go wrong, you've got a very nice margin. Also, you're reducing your risk, because if property prices fall in the short term, because you've got it at such a good deal, maybe you're still in positive equity and you've still got really good equity in that property. Another reason why buying at a really good discount is so important is that if you're undergoing the BRRR strategy, we don't simply want to be relying on the refurbishment and the renovation to add the value, right? So what we want is a double whammy effect. So if we're buying below market value in the first instance, which means we've got equity from day one, but also we're renovating the property and adding value to it, well, we've got two ways to profit from this particular property. We're profiting from purchasing it at a discount, and we're profiting from adding value via refurbishment. Okay, so that's enough on buy. Let's come on to refurbing, the first R in the BRRR. Now, refurbing a property is a very interesting skill, and it's a skill that you get better on as you go on. So, maybe your first few properties, you may come in over budget. It may take you a bit longer than what you think to actually do, but once you've done 5 or 6 or 7, you start to understand the numbers and you can quite accurately forecast refurbishments. Now, really important, we want to be adding value. Just because you're refurbing a property does not mean you're adding value. So if you're overpaying for a property and maybe that property is around the ceiling price on that particular street, but it doesn't matter what work you do to it, how much you spend on the property, there's a certain ceiling on every single street, and if you're spending £20,000 and you're only £10,000 off that ceiling, well, refurbing a property probably isn't the best thing to do. So when you're refurbing a property, make sure that you're confident that, if I'm spending £25,000 refurbing this property and it's adding another £40,000 in value, well, that £15,000 difference, that equity, that would be something that I'd be happy with. So make sure there's significant equity and profit in the deal for you. Another little tip on refurbs, if it's your first one, maybe increase your contingency to about 20% of what you think the refurb is going to cost. As you get more experience, you can slowly start to decrease this to around 10%. But even me, if I'm refurbing a property and there are unknowns and there were higher risks than normal, again, I would increase that contingency to maybe 15 or 20%. Okay, so moving on to the second R, which is rent. So once the property has been refurbed, therefore it's now habitable. So we can rent the property out, we can get a good tenant in paying, market level rent. And once we've rented the property out, of course, that property is now generating an income, which is absolutely great. And which allows us to move on to the next step, which is refinance. Now, some people choose to refinance prior to renting out the property if it's taking maybe a bit longer to rent out the property or for whatever reason. But, there's no hard or fast rule. Normally, I like to refurbish the property, rent it out, and then line up the refinance, shortly after the tenant has moved in. So when it comes to refinancing, this is how it works. So we're going to go through some really nice and simple numbers. So let's say we purchased this property in the first instance for £100,000. We've also spent £25,000 on a full renovation to bring this property up to scratch and to add value. So we're all in for roughly £125,000. Now let's say we purchased this with a mortgage in the first instance, so we got a 75% loan to value. So 75% of the purchase price of £100,000 is a mortgage of £75,000. Okay? So the refurb has been finished, the tenant has moved in, and let's say that property is worth somewhere around £160,000. Maybe in the first instance we got a really good below market value offer accepted, but also via the refurbishment we had uplifted the value of the property. So now what we do is we go for the refinance. So again, if we're sticking to the same loan to value, 75% loan to value, our new mortgage is 75% of the new valuation of £160,000, which is £120,000. So your new mortgage is £120,000, your old mortgage is £75,000 down here. So you use your new mortgage to pay off your old mortgage and you're left with a cash surplus of £45,000, which is absolutely incredible. And that £45,000 is enough, as we all know, in the north of the UK to purchase a property with a 25% deposit, and you've got enough for a refurb there too. So you can repeat the process. And that's the optional last R in the BRRR strategy, which is repeat, because now you've got that cash surplus from the bank. Once you've paid off your old mortgage, you can go again with that cash. And that's the secret to scaling a property portfolio fast using the BRRR strategy. You want to be pulling out cash to then go again. Now, here's the thing, don't obsess with pulling all your cash out the deal. I know a lot of investors that really obsess about this and they won't pull the trigger and go for a deal unless they can pull all their cash out. For me, if I've got £5,000, £10,000 cash left in the property, I'm okay with that, because if you look at your investment investment from a return on capital employed basis, which basically looks at your investment, the cash you've got in that property, which is £5,000 or £10,000, compared to the income that's generating, and also factoring capital appreciation, well, actually, the return on capital employed is huge, it's significant. So even though I've got that £5,000 or £10,000 cash tied up in the property, I don't mind because I'm hitting my criteria and my strategy is being fulfilled. So I hope you've got value from this video and understand how to scale a property portfolio fast using the buy, refurbish, rent, refinance strategy. If you've still got questions, or maybe you need a bit of help undergoing this strategy and looking to onboard a coach or property mentor, well, head to my website, ms7.uk, click on the mentoring page and book a call with me. I'm very, very passionate about helping people invest in property. You can probably tell. I absolutely love it. I don't see it as work, it's a passion of mine. So if you're looking to work with a property coach or mentor and scale a property portfolio and maybe go from 1 to 10 properties in years and not decades, book a call with me. All the very best with your property investing day. Goodbye.